Last week, we had the opportunity to interview the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Sir Keir Starmer. For this, we put out a survey asking you, the TLDR audience, what you would ask the UK government about its recent decision to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027.
Prime Minister, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. I'm Ben from TLDR News. We're an online news organisation and we focus on making videos for younger people about current events and politics.
Fantastic.
So we've got a focus on UK politics.
Great.
So a couple of days ago we sent out a questionnaire to our audience asking for some questions about your defence announcement.
Very good.
Do you want to just give a brief overview for those that haven't seen it on the defence announcement?
Yeah, let me do this quickly and briefly. I think everybody will understand that we're living in a very volatile time at the moment. There's conflict in Ukraine, and we know that conflict in Ukraine or Europe can wash up on our shores. So it's very important as Prime Minister that I make sure our country is safe. That's why I've said we're going to increase the spending on our defence. It's going up to the highest level since the Cold War, sustained level, very quickly now, 2027. That is very important for the defence of our country, but also it's really important for jobs at places like this. And I've been in there meeting apprentices who came out of school, came to work here, are now in the third or fourth year of their apprenticeship, and they're really proud of the work that they are doing. And the way that they badge what they're doing, they said they're proud to support those who serve. And so in a way they're playing their part in the defence and security of our country, and they're really proud, the young people in there.
Of course, and a lot of our audience, especially being of that generation, were asking about how we're funding this. So obviously you've said that this is coming from the foreign aid budget. A lot of people have asked why it's coming from that section, and we've had a lot of questions about other ways to fund this. A lot of our audience asked questions about could we not fund this via a wealth tax, for instance, or other means?
Well, firstly, it's really important that we do fund this. So we've got to increase our defence and security spend because in the end, that is the first duty of the Prime Minister. It's the most important thing for the country and it affects everybody, particularly young people. We've enjoyed 80 years now of peace and my job is to make sure that that continues for every person in this country. In terms of the money, it was very important for me to be able to say, as I announced the extra spend, where the money would come from, which is why we decided on overseas aid. That's not a decision I wanted to make because we do good work with overseas aid, and I want to get back to that. We haven't cut it completely, so we'll now reprioritise, but it's really important for our economic stability that I'm really clear about where the amount of money is coming from. In terms of, sort of people do say, well, why don't you tax more? Or change your rules, your fiscal rules. That would, and we're very highly taxed as it is. The fiscal rules are really important. And we did have Liz Truss not so long ago, and she blew up the economy and everybody suffered. Economic stability is really important, and therefore, defence and security of the country first. Economic stability obviously has to be part of that. And the good thing about this spend is it will translate into well-paid jobs across the country. We're in Merseyside here today, but in places like this, particularly for young people coming in to possibly the first job of their career, to know it's a well-skilled, high-skilled job that can take real pride in.
Of course. You mentioned there fiscal rules. I mean, one of the other questions that we did get, we got a question from Nathan in Huntingdon, and he asked, does the government plan to seize frozen Russian assets to fund this defence spending increase?
The Russian assets have been frozen, and we're using the interest, the profits if you like, already, and that money, we signed some of that and passed it over to Ukraine just the other day. The assets themselves, there is a discussion going on as to whether we should seize the assets. That is a complicated business with all sorts of risks. But look, there is a discussion going on as to whether that might be possible. I don't want to get ahead of that. Yeah. If it is going to be done, it has to be done with other countries. But we have to be really careful of the risks in what is a really complicated area.
Of course. And we had another question, just moving on slightly, from Fane Maidstone, asking what the money is being spent on. who you're planning to get the weapons, where's the extra defence spending set to go, and can you ensure that this is going to be spent in the UK on UK companies?
Yeah, well, this is a really good question from Faye. The first thing is it'll go on the defence capability that we need for the front line, our armed forces, who will be using the capability. What we need to make sure is it's the most modern, up to date, and I'm very keen that we learn the lessons of the Ukraine conflict, because sadly that's a conflict in real life, and we've got lessons to learn from how that is being conducted. So that's being wound into what we're doing. But in relation to the second part of the question, yes, that is a lot of extra money, over £13 billion year on year. That's a huge amount of money. We want to see that coming into the British economy, British jobs, British skills, British businesses. And that is why we're linking this to the economic security for our country, because yes, it's a lot of money, and because it's a lot of money, it ought to be in British businesses as far as I'm concerned.
Of course. You mentioned at the beginning of that answer there about recruitment, and we had a question from an ex-army member, Bob, in Manchester, and he mentioned that there's been struggles to hit recruitment targets over the last 10 years. Is increasing the defence budget's great, but how would you plan to get boots on the ground as army numbers still need soldiers?
I think there are a number of ways to do that. Last year we had the biggest pay settlement for some time for the armed forces, and that was important and meant a lot to those that serve. I think that a time when the whole of Europe knows it's got to step up on defence and security, in the UK we feel that very strongly. If you look at the history of the United Kingdom, we've always been a country that steps up, and I know that our armed forces will. And I think as people look at the profile of defence spending now for years to come, 2.5% by 2027, going on to 3% in the next Parliament, this is the time to step forward and serve the country, either on the front line if that's what people choose to do, or supporting the front line, which is essentially what's going on in shipyards like this, where they're producing the capability that's going to be needed, going to be used on the front line.
Yeah, so just keeping on this topic, we got a question from Teddy in Manchester, who's in secondary school, and he asked, how is our defence going to get better when no one my age would ever fight in a war?
We'll never fight in a war.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Well, look, I hope Teddy, is it?
Teddy, yeah.
Teddy. I hope Teddy never fights in a war, and that's everything that I'm doing is intended to hold the peace.
Yeah.
But sometimes to hold the peace, you have to be prepared to fight. You have to have the capability to fight. And in Ukraine, if there's an end to the conflict, a deal, that deal needs to be defended, because we know that Putin in the past has breached deals when they're not defended. He'll do so again. And so in order to keep Teddy safe, all of our young people safe, all of our country safe, we need to fight for peace just as much as we would fight in a conflict. And that is what I'm doing in stepping up defence spending. That's what I'm doing in trying to ensure that European countries as a whole come together now. We've been convening groups of countries. We had a group in London just at the weekend, working with the United States, working with Ukraine, but precisely to get that lasting peace in Ukraine, and to make sure that everybody in this country is safe and secure, and that we continue the peace that we've enjoyed now for 80 years or so.
Prime Minister, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We actually discuss Keir Starmer a lot in our physical magazine Too Long. The latest issue contains a breakdown of his first months in office, including if he could be a one-time Prime Minister, as well as more specifically diving into his foreign policy issues. The magazine also contains our ranking of the 25 most influential people as rated by the TLDR team and you. The next edition contains that entire ranking, as well as articles and long reads about all of the most influential people, the power they hold, and how they wield their immense influence. We also discuss a variety of other topics, from the issues facing Starmer in the UK, to the rise of the new right in Europe, to if peace can really hold in Gaza. These are all topics we discuss in videos, but the reporting you'll find in Too Long is some of our best writing, with us able to spend longer on stories than is ever possible in YouTube videos. If you're interested in checking it out and supporting the channel, then you can pre-order a copy right now at toolong.news. There you'll find two versions of the magazine, the standard and the premium editions. Buying the premium edition not only gets you the magazine, but it also gets you out 2 hours of exclusive content where the team debate and discuss their top 25 ranking and also react to the audience's vote for the very first time.
We could potentially have a monumental jump on our hands.
Yeah.
Hands up for leapfrogging into sixth.
The most powerful European country, the second biggest economy, the nuclear power that is... The nuclear power!
Yeah.
You'll also get regular access to our behind-the-scenes podcast, The Bullpen, and get your name printed in the thank you section of the magazine. Whichever edition you want, head over to toolong.news to find out more. And if you subscribe to the magazine and use code SUBSCRIBENOW, you'll be able to get a copy for as low as £4.99. Thanks for your support, because Too Long really does help fund our journalism year round.